Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, depending on what time you are listening to this. It may be 2 in the morning and you are suffering from insomnia and you're thinking, what better way to fall asleep than one Cardinal, one Cub, and one beer? But we're glad you're here anyway. I do want to remind you that we are on social media. You can follow us on Twitter, you can like us on Facebook, and we have our YouTube channel, One Cardinal, One Cub, and One Beer. You can subscribe there. I should have an arrow because I edit this later on. I put the arrow in later on, but I should have an arrow pointing to where you can click to subscribe. So please subscribe to our channel. And of course, we always have the good old fashioned email, which we will be asking you to put to use in a little bit. In a little bit, yeah. So I said that right. Excuse me. So I'll turn it over to JJ because he's a much better talker than me. JJ, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. The World Series just ended. Um, I go through a little sadness this time of year. You know, when there's like three stages of grieving for me for baseball season. You got when your team is eliminated, then you got when the regular season's over, and then when the World Series is over. It takes me a couple of days. You get so used to a game almost every night. I don't know how you feel about that, Vince, but
I
it's kind of
I'm serious. I love other sports. I love the NFL. I love college football. I love college basketball. I'll do NBA and hockey a little bit, but I'm not really big into them. But nothing compares to baseball, and I actually do get depressed this time of year until spring training starts. And maybe it's seasonal depression. I think it's just I miss baseball. I always liken it to this. Baseball's my mistress. She shows up for 9 months out of the year and pleases me on a nightly basis, and then she's gone.
she leaves me standing there with sadness. Yes.
She's sadness. We'll leave it at sadness. Yeah. So yeah, I know where you're coming from. So
Oh man. But that being said, the hot stove league, the awards are coming, the free agency, the winter meetings. There's so much going on. So it is a concept. It's just a little bit different. But I'm going to make a recommendation. I saw a movie on Netflix called Facing Nolan about the Nolan Ryan story. And you go through like baby pictures of him growing up in Alvin, Texas. His friends are on there, his high school coaches. I recommend it very highly. And he was one of those pitchers that came along when now they have videos of all the old games and everything. And I mean, they're talking to Phil Gardner and Art Howe and Enos Cabell, people he played against, Pete Rose, and people he was a big fan of Sandy Koufax, and Randy Johnson was a fan of his. And so people he admired and people that admired him, and how the legend kind of grew. And I recommend that movie. It's 2 hours for all you diehard baseball fans out there. I really recommend it. Vince, have you seen that one?
no, I haven't seen that one, but I will check it out. There was a documentary. I think it was on Netflix a few years ago. You can probably find it. I think it was just called Fastball,
I saw that one too. Yeah.
and it talks about how they measured the speed of a fastball. And when they measured Ryan, who in the 70s was clocked at 100 miles an hour as the fastest pitcher, they measured the fastball different as far as the miles per hour different than they do today. And that's one of the reasons why fastballs are faster. And what they said is if Ryan, and I'm going back in my memory bank and I hope I'm accurate, if Ryan was clocked the way they're clocking pitchers today, his fastball would be clocked at 108.
Yes. 108.9, they were saying.
Yeah.
And then late, he played till he's 46. Late in his career, he developed this curveball that was unhittable. You had to pick one. Which one were you going to go for? And that he took his game to another whole level. It's just finally he couldn't come out every 5 days and pitch anymore. And he hurt a
Yeah.
crack in his arm. And it's a remarkable movie, an incredible player. Maybe I don't know if the greatest pitcher ever, but one of the greatest pitchers ever. And it's really a good story, and why he left some of the teams he left, and where he ended up, and why he wanted to be close to home. That's why he finished most of the last half of his career with Texas and Houston. So
Yeah.
a great movie.
Yeah, while we're on to this, before you get rolling with Cardinal information, there is a documentary it's coming out. I think it just dropped today on HBO Max, and I think it's also on Showtime on Willie Mays that I haven't had a chance to see yet. That um, actually goes back to footage that the Giants actually released. Tom Hanks' son Collins, one of the people who put this documentary together, and the reviews have been just fantastic. The only thing I have against it is they do have Barry Bonds giving his opinions quite a bit. Willie is 91 and he's still with us. And he can probably still play center field better than half the people in MLB. So good guy.
Some say the greatest player ever, all five tool as a five tool player. Yeah.
Hard to argue. Hard to,
Oh man.
yeah.
Well, in Cardinal land, a lot of rumors. I remember you talking about some of the Cub rumors. Wilson Contreras. I know I kind of like to see guys spend their whole career with a team. I know that's not possible, and things happen. Young players come up. You can't afford them anymore. But Wilson Contreras would be a huge upgrade from what we've got sitting there after Yachty's gone, and I would love to have him. We'll see, but that's a possibility. There's been rumors about Mike Trout because the Angels owner selling the team, and he's very close with Albert, and Albert may talk up St. Louis. I don't know. I don't know what all it would take to get him, but any team would love to have a Mike Trout on their team. Talking about center fielders right there. And the other one, there's a lot of talk about Trey Turner coming to the Cardinals.
Yeah. That's most of the predictions are saying he's going to be going to the Cardinals.
I can't believe it. That's just almost, I never even thought about Trey Turner because I just thought that was way out of, no possible way we get Trey Turner. The only problem is if Trey Turner comes here, which is a great thing, we have a kid that's about a year away, Marcel Wynn, and he played for the Razorbacks because I keep track of the Hogs because I'm from Arkansas. He's incredible. He was a pitcher and he wants to pitch and play shortstop. I don't think they're going to let him do that because he throws 100 miles an hour as well,
Yeah.
and he's clocked it like 102-mile-an-hour throw across the diamond, and he played in that Arizona Fall League All-Star game, and he's supposed to be coming. So if we get Trey Turner, that means Wynn will have to play second, which means what are we going to do with those guys? It's a good problem to have. I still don't believe we'll get Trey Turner, but we'll
Well,
see.
the Cardinals are stockpiling. I've had a long day. Stockpiling infielders. They did acquire Jose Fermin from the Guardians. At one time, considered. I think he's still in his early 20s, but at one time he was considered the best glove in the minor leagues as far as the middle infielder goes, and he's had some time in the major leagues. So, um, they're kind of building that
Maybe a big
shortstop
trade.
up. Let me
Maybe.
ask you this about catching. Uh, Sean Murphy, Gold Glove winner for the A's, he's on the block. Would you rather have Murphy, who Gold Glove winner, a much better defensive catcher than Contreras, and a much more respected uh, uh, game caller? Um, would you rather have him and sacrifice a little bit of offense? I mean, he's a pretty. I think he popped like 18 home runs. He's a pretty good offensive player, but he's not quite Contreras. Would you rather have him, who's a little bit better defensively, who's more in the mold of a Yachty type catcher, or would you rather have Contreras, who you can plug into the left field, DH, he can play first, he can play around the diamond. He doesn't just have to catch. And he's also got that intangible. He's just a natural born leader. Uh, would Murphy be a more attractive offer, or is it just a wash between the two?
We were talking about that. I have a bunch of friends. We have like a round table and we talk all these different moves, and some people are just so unrealistic. They want to get we want to get the worst player we got for something way out
Oh
of
yeah,
line. I got friends like that. I'll be honest with you, and it just doesn't seem realistic. But they're talking like it would take a Nolan Gorman, the second baseman, the power hitting second baseman, who has a lot. He didn't have a great year this year; it's his first year up, but he does have pop, and it would take somebody like that to get him. I think the Cardinals are looking for a little more hitting, and Contreras would probably take about a 4-year deal, and we could have Kisner or Herrera be the backup. And I think Contreras would be great in the middle of the lineup. I'd probably like to see Contreras a little more, to be honest with you. But it depends on what they're doing. If they're going to spend a lot of money for a Trey Turner or a big name outfielder, I wouldn't be upset with Murphy. And with all these infielders, we're going to have a stock jam of all these players. So we probably could get them for a Nolan Gorman, or that's what I'm thinking anyway. Maybe I'm out of line there, but a
Yeah,
good, because the A's like the good young prospects, you
they
know?
do. They do. And Bean knows how to swing a trade that works out for both parties. And
Yeah,
we're going to talk about 5 great trades that our teams have made, but really a good trade is when both teams benefit.
I agree.
But when, you know,
I,
like when the Cubs are trading with the Cardinals or the White Sox, I want, yeah, you can suck now for all I
yeah.
care.
Well, the other thing I was going to mention in Cardinal land, because there's so many stories and everything, but the big thing is we lost some coaches. Maddox is not returning. The hitting coach, or as you call him, the whooping boy, didn't come back, and Skip Schumacher is now the manager of the Florida Marlins or the Miami Marlins. So we got all these coaches in, and I'm very excited that Matt Holliday, a Cardinal favorite. I like Big Matt. He had coached at Oklahoma State for a little bit, and he's coming back. And we'll have Willie McGee as the outfield coach, and Matt Holliday. I really like to see that. I don't know how good he is, but I think we got a young team pretty much, and I know he would garner a lot of respect. And him and Nolan Arenado are very close, so I think it's a win-win.
Yeah, the bench coach has an interesting job because what the bench coach is trying to do is to help the manager with areas where maybe the manager isn't thinking at this point. A sounding board, I guess you could say. And as far as that goes, there's not a whole lot of experience there. I mean, there's a ton of experience playing, but there's, the actual job, there's not experience there. But another job of the bench coach is you are the buffer with the player and the managers a lot of time because the manager has someone to filter, during game time. Yeah, I need to talk to the manager when you need this, this, and this. Well, I can help you with this. But the bench coach does a lot of that. So, with him having a great relationship with the players, being a very well respected person who the players have teammates on down, to the players who look up to him today, they've all loved him. He'd be excellent. So I think it would be, part of him learning, and it would be an apprenticeship for him to maybe move into managing one day.
That's what I was thinking too on that one. Yeah, it's sort of like grooming you. And if Ollie gets thrown out of the game, he's pretty much taken over, and that's a good situation. We got some other coaches too. Turner Ward, I remember him with the Indians, but a
Yeah.
lot of these guys have been with other organizations. I remember them as players. Our bullpen coach, Julio Rengel, I remember him with the Yankees, but he's been coaching with the Yankees for a while. Now he's over here. A lot of these guys just came up through our system and they just moved them on up. And I kind of like that. I really do. And I'm very happy about the coaching staff. And it seems like the Cardinals, before we would drag our feet, and it seems like this year we're on it. We're making some, like the move today with the infielder. They made some decisions on what they're going to do with their coaches, and then now they got new guys in there. So it seems like they're being pretty aggressive already and not dragging their feet. I kind of like it. It looks like it's going to be a fun off season.
Yeah. Well, as far as the Cubs go, there's not a whole lot of stuff besides rumors right now. It's no secret we are going to be in the shortstop race, and there's Correa, there's Trey Turner, Swanson, and gosh, I'm leaving out. There's 4 big ones. Who's the fourth one?
Bogarts, Xavier
Yeah,
Bogarts.
yeah. They're going to be in the running for all 4 of them. And if I had my way, I would like either Correa or Turner. My third choice would be Bogarts. And sounds bad, Swanson's such a great player, has some pop in his bat, Gold Glove. You think, yeah, he's the fourth best shortstop on the market right now. So we will upgrade at shortstop, and that will enable us to move Nico Horner to second base, where he was a Gold Glove finalist 2 years ago. He could also, they've experimented a little bit with him in center field. So that would solidify our infield. What I really like about Correa is not just what he brings offensively and defensively; it's what he brings mentally. He is on top of sabermetrics, and he understands the importance of increasing your WAR, increasing your on base percentage, and he is an outgoing personality, and he shares this information with his players or with his teammates. So I think that those intangibles would be something that this young team could really use. But we're going to improve no matter which one we end up with. I mean, uh, Horner was good at shortstop, um, but when we had really just kind of scraps playing second base. So we really need another middle infielder, and to have someone like Correa or a Turner there.
They would
Move,
look good in that lineup. That
yeah,
lineup all of a sudden takes up a notch right there.
yeah, yeah. What I am excited about though, the Cubs have a player who has done something incredible. Um, he's on the 40-man roster now. His name's Matt Burvis.
I've heard
He,
about him. I don't know much about him, but I have
well,
heard the name.
well, you're going to learn about him now.
All right.
I this is almost like a mini player spotlight, because I don't have a lot to bring up about the Cubs right now, but this guy is just fascinating me. In 4 years of college, he was a two-way player in college. He played first and he pitched, and I'm not going to get into his pitching statistics, but in 120 games in college, he hit 9 home runs, drove 47 runs, had a 281 average, an OPS of or an on base percentage of 384, and an OPS of 845. That's a college player. That's decent stuff. He went undrafted, and he probably would have been slotted somewhere in the middle rounds, but he was drafted during the COVID year where I think they only did 3 rounds. So he went undrafted, and he signed for $20,000, which is very cheap. But when you're looking at a guy who didn't have a stellar college career, you know, that's about what you would expect. So his first year in the minors in 2021, he was in Myrtle Beach Class A, and he had a cup of coffee in AAA. And I don't know why he had this cup of coffee in Iowa, but he did. In 73 games, 303 at bats, 9 home runs, 44 RBIs, a 209 average, an on base percentage of 310, and an OPS of 677. Who cares? You're an A ball. You've played 4 years of college, so you're not like an 18-year-old in A ball. You're one of the older players in A ball, and you're not hitting. He's on nobody's radar. He went to spring training last year, and in 2022, he started in South Bend Class A, moved up to Tennessee in Class AA, and then went to AAA in Iowa, finished the year there. In those 3 stops combined, 137 games, 578 at bats, 36 home runs, 119 RBIs, a 309 average, 379 on base percentage, OPS of 984, which is 150 points higher than his college career. He went to the Arizona Fall League, where he's playing now. He just won the MVP of the Arizona Fall League All-Star game. He has 61 at bats so far, 6 home runs, 12 RBIs, 291 average, and an OPS of 999. What happened to this guy? He retooled his swing, and it almost reminds me of when Tiger Woods redid his golf swing. I've posted a video on Facebook and Twitter, and it's a YouTube video. I think it takes, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 minutes to watch, but he explains how he redid his swing. And with the help of, gosh, guy's name is escaping me now, a guy who has ties to the Cubs. he coached him on what he needs to do as far as changing his swing. And it wasn't just like an overnight change. He kind of started toying with changing his swing in college, but it didn't really come into fruition until this year. So now he's got this tremendously pretty swing, left-handed power hitting swing, and he's really producing. We are going to get a first baseman. We are going to aggressively end up with Abreu, possibly Rizzo. I don't see it happening, but that's rumor out there. But if we don't, I even if we do, I hope this guy gets a decent look. I hope he can DH. I hope he can play some first base. I hope he can get 350 at bats. So fit his bat in somewhere. Maybe play a little left field somewhere. Just try to get his bat in there and see if this guy's for real, because it it's a great story. It is a tremendous story of someone who nobody expected anything from, who turned it around so drastically. So keep that guy's name in mind, Matt Mervis, and uh, look at the YouTube video. It's just very fascinating, very cerebral how he has changed his swing and uh, become a much better hitter.
The Cubs are in good shape. They have 6 of the top 100 minor league prospects right now. And that young man is on one. He's one of the guys in that top 100
Yeah,
prospects. So,
yeah. I'm gonna before I turn it back over to you, I want to give a shout out to two things. Number one, I'm wearing a New York Knights jersey, so I I have jerseys from movies. Like I had the Bad News Bears last week. A few weeks ago, I had Major League. I've got a League of Their Own. I've got the Sandlot. I've even got the hockey jersey from Slapshot. So I asked about my Bad News Bears, and just to let you know, I kind of collect these jerseys because I'm a nerd. So
very cool. I think it's cool.
second thing I want to shout out is I have a friend who does a podcast. Um, it's called The Worst Fans in Baseball. It's a Cardinal podcast, and there's a lot of shtick in it. There's a lot of comedy. But what I love, my friend Tom, what he does, and there's 3 of them on the podcast, is he will weave history and politics and baseball all together, and just a different slant, as a baseball fan. Now, if you're watching this and you appreciate what we do, I do want to let you know that Tom, who I hope one day we'll have as a guest on here, Tom's podcast with him and his friends, it's very much an adult podcast. So if you like sitting around, listening to this with your kids and say, and now we're going to listen to this, that may not be the best thing for your 6-year-old a year. But anyway, Tom does a fantastic job. We are going to do our first contest, and JJ is going to explain it right now.
All right. With the free, we've been thinking about different contests, and the one we're going to do to start it all off, I am one, just join it. You're going to have fun, and we're going to keep track of this because the free agency season is upon us. I picked 5 free agents, and what we're going to do is you're going over the next week. This podcast will come out Thursday till noon of next Wednesday. There's going to be 5 free agents, and you as a viewer pick which team you think that free agent's going to end up with. Then we have a tiebreaker. So after those 5 free agents, which I'm going to show you here in a minute, we have a tiebreaker, which is Carlos Correa. How many seasons will he get when he signs his new free agent deal? So that's the tiebreaker. Now, after if the winners have picked 2 right and get the years right on the thing, we're going to put everybody in a little fishbowl and pick out a winner. And the prize, I'm going to go over the prize right now. Because we're 1 Cardinal, 1 Cub, 1 beer, we wanted something with a beer influence. Well, we were going to give away these commemorative Cardinal 2006, 2011 beers, but evidently the man doesn't like sitting giving beer out to people. So I guess that's a no-no. So what I got was our prize is a beer stein from the 1942 World Series. This was a giveaway at the ballpark It's pretty nice. And we are giving away a Cardinal prize this time. The next time we have a contest, I want it to be a Cub prize because we don't want it to be leaned one way or the other. We're both fans, but this is one of the things I had since I couldn't give away the beer. We can give away the beer stein. So let me put the list up, and these are the free agents. One Cardinal, one Cub free agent contest. If you write down and send to us, there's an address at the bottom. Aaron Judge, Anthony Rizzo, Carlos Correa, and then I threw two surprises in there, Jock Peterson and Andrew Benintendi, because I have no clue where they're going to end up. And you can pick retire. You can't, that can be a choice. And then the tiebreaker is how many years will Carlos Correa get when he signs his contract? So at the end of this, I will put that list back up there so you guys can write that down. You can send it in to us. Can people that are just listening to it, where would they send it to, Vince? Where would be a good spot?
If everybody, whether you're watching or listening, just send it to one card, one cub, one beer at gmail.com. Don't send it through social media. Make sure you email it to us, one card, one cub, one beer at gmail.com. And also on our social media, when I post this video tomorrow, I will also, in the comments, I will have the rules and everything explained. So, you can go back and look at it.
Whoever wins it, also, I will put on the one Cardinal, one Cub, one beer wall of fame back there. Your name will go back there, whoever you are, anywhere in the world, anywhere in the country. We got listeners all over the place. Oh yeah, that's bigger than the Bearstein. Yeah, that's some notoriety right there. So I'll put that back up at the end if it's all right. And I'm excited. This will be our first contest, and I hope we get a lot of people getting involved, and we can talk some smack, whatever you want to do. But I'm excited because I have no idea. Aaron Judge could end up 4 different teams. I don't know where he's going to go. Rizzo, there's I know they love him in Chi-Town. Carlos Correa, I don't know where he's going to end up. Oh, well, yeah, there we go.
They're all going to the Cubs.
Jock Peterson.
Yes, we want him back.
So that'll be great. I'm excited. Now, me and Vince won't participate in this. We're keeping it fair and square.
No family.
No, okay, no family. So Brody and Noah, nope, you can't do it. So I'm excited. This is going to be fun. And then we'll talk about you, whoever wins it too. And I'll get your address and send it to you, or take it to you if you're somewhere in the area. So anyway, go ahead.
We want to remind you that sometimes free agents don't sign until like the last week of spring training. So it could be a little bit, or sometimes they just pop real quick. So when this contest ends, we really don't know. Another thing, final thing, before we talk about the World Series is we finally have some merch. We have the official one Cardinal, one Cub, one beer coffee mug.
Oh, yes. Everything tastes better in this mug, I have to say.
It does. Yes, it does. And we also have the official one Cardinal, one Cub, one beer clock behind my head. And we'll have those available to order. I just haven't had time to sit down and figure out what the price would be on them, but we do have the merch starting to flow, so we are almost like a real show.
Okay.
So
it's growing up. It's growing up right in front of our eyes.
Oh, what'd you think about the World Series?
I loved it. That's one of the best World Series I've seen in a long time. I'm taking the Cardinals and Cubs out of it, and just watching it, I enjoyed it. The Phillies, a little train that could. I know they got the 4th biggest payroll. It ain't like they're, sisters of the poor or anything, but they went through every round. They were the underdog, and they went through it. And their fans were loud and rowdy. Houston, on paper, I thought the best team, and Dusty Baker. And I mean, when this is all said and done, a lot of these, I believe Dusty will be in the Hall of Fame. I believe Verlander, Altuve. And then on the other side, Bryce Harper. That guy, I put him almost like in a legendary status now. 2 MVPs anyway, but how he came through in those playoffs, phenomenal. And that Houston bullpen, I believe that was the difference. The Astros, the last 3 games, only hit barely over 100. but that bullpen just shut down the Phillies. I think they would have shut down anybody. That was a great display. I enjoyed that game. Every game was entertaining. If you had like a slideshow, that first game was the comeback. You had the one game where the Phillies hit 5 home runs. You had the no hitter. And then you had that Chase McCormick catch in center field that saved the day off the JT Realmuto blast. Kyle Schwarber, I'm going to wear, if he comes to St. Louis, I'm wearing a hard hat if I'm sitting in the audit. And if I'm sitting out there, if he hits that ball, it's a laser beam. I'm telling you. So that's my take on it. It's short and sweet.
I love the World Series, and it's funny because last week, whenever we were broadcasting, right now the score is 0-0 because we wasn't watching Wednesday's game because we're broadcasting. Little did we know that we are missing the second no hitter in World Series history. It was a combined no hitter, which in my mind takes it down a notch, but still, it was a great accomplishment. It seemed to me that Houston played the first 3 games. All right, we're in the World Series. And then after they had the game where they gave up the 5 home runs, which I'm just convinced now that the Phillies were getting the pitches. McCullers was tipping his pitches. When that game was over, it's like Houston said, okay, let's get serious about this. Would they win 107 games this year? Was it that many?
100 was 106. I'm not sure. I'm not
They
sure.
a ton of games with the pitching, with the offense, with the balance, with the defense. Do you think this is one of the top 10 teams in baseball history?
I can really only speak from the 70s on, and I'd have to say they're top 5, I think, even since the 1970s. I really think they're here. You know, you got those Braves teams that won 14 divisions in a row, but they only won one world championship.
Yeah.
Those that early Oakland A's in the early 70s where they went to 5 World Series in a row, I put them way up there. And then you got the Yankees when Joe Torre managed them and Jeter was there. That was pretty impressive, those years they put together. But I'm telling you, Houston is something special. Usually, if you catch fire, you might get 2 or 3 years where you're up there. You guys had 5 years in a row there where you guys were really good. But they put together for a streak now. Very nice.
We had heard the last few years about Pena, one of the most heralded minor leaguers. His father played second base for the Cardinals, Geronimo Pena.
Yeah.
So he had the pedigree, and he had all this pressure coming into the season. You're a rookie, you're taking Carlos Correa's place, and how do you respond? Well, you're the MVP of the World Series.
And the playoffs. And the playoffs.
Yeah, just a coming out party for a great player. One of the issues that we have in the Midwest is that we really don't see a whole lot of West Coast teams because they're playing that strange 9-15 time start at our time, and of course people on the East Coast, that's even later. So Houston, once they left the National League Central, I don't see them a whole lot unless I stay up for a game or I'm watching them play one of the other coast teams. So, and honestly, this is a little petty. Since the trash can incident, I haven't wanted to watch them. I've been a little ticked off at them. So, but I got over it. So I wish I would have watched a little more, paid a little more attention to Houston this year, because I feel like I really missed a tremendous team that I didn't focus on until the playoffs. By golly, there's not a weakness on this team, not at all. And the Phillies pitching was excellent, but Houston's pitching was just out of this world. And there was, to me, the only weak starter that Houston had, not weak, the weakest starter, which is like saying, the dumbest graduate from Harvard or whatever, you know. Uh, Verlander looked like the most hittable. He's a Hall of Famer, so uh, just a tremendous World Series. And like I said, my mistress is leaving me. I'm going to be a little depressed, but you know we do have free agency and trades, the hot
Oh,
stove, and before we know, pitchers and catchers will be, you know, frolic.
96 days, I think it is.
There you
96.
go. There you go. All right. We are going to talk about our top five free agent acquisitions for our teams that we rank. And then we're going to look at the top five acquisitions made through trade in the history of our teams. And JJ, why don't you start us off with your top five free agents that the Cardinals have acquired?
I'm going to put a little asterisk on this. The Cardinals really haven't been real active in free agency. Free agency's just come around since 1974, and even though we dabble in it, we don't. Not a lot of big names. We always hear, "Oh, we're the second one for that guy." David Price was out there one time, and we were going to get him, and then the Red Sox came at the last minute and got him. We always hear we finished second place. So my list is it's not going to be it's not going to dazzle you, I don't think. But number five, and this is my list. Other people may have other people they think or may have different numbers, but mine is number five is Mike Matheny. He had played with the Toronto Blue Jays and became a free agent. And he joined us in 2000 and played till 2004, ages 29 to 33. We went to in the 5 years that he was here, we went to the playoffs 4 times. Mike was not an offensive juggernaut at all, but he handled the pitching staff very well, great at digging the ball out of the dirt. And I think he did a great job, throwing people out, calling a game, and playing defense where the guys could just know they could throw it up there and Mike would get it for them. He collected 3 gold gloves in the 5 years he was here. And he also, now this was his hitting while he was here. He had 245 average, which in the last 2 years in St. Louis, we would have gladly took 245. So 245 is not too bad. He hit a total of 29 home runs in 5 years. So he didn't hit a whole lot of home runs, and 221 RBIs, and he did steal 2 bases. He did steal 2 bases. But the main thing was he was the guy that he mentored Yachty. And in 2004, he was probably like 60% of the time, and Yachty was about 40% of the time. And his contract was up, and the Cardinals offered him a 1-year deal, $1 million. But the Giants offered him 3 years, $10 million. And of course, the Cardinals said, "You must go take that deal." So he spent his last 2 years in San Francisco. I know I'm getting off track here a little bit. And he suffered concussion, and his career was over. But I really think Mike Matheny, I love the guy. He was a good teammate, a very professional player. And we had some good years when Mike was here. So he's my number five. Did you want to flip? Oh, go ahead.
Mike Matheny was most responsible for getting Chris Carpenter to St. Louis because he had caught him in Toronto and said, "This guy, when he's healthy, is great." And that's why the Cardinals took the chance, because Carpenter was banged up all the time in Toronto. So
yes, he was, had a lot of injuries.
Matheny believed in him and convinced management to take a look at him, and there you go.
Right. Hey, that's pretty good. Do you want to go back and forth, or you just want me to do my five?
We can go back and forth.
Okay, go ahead. There you go, sir.
Well, my number five, and I promise it's going to be the last time I talk about him for a few episodes. My number five is Dave Kingman. And I do have reason. In 1978, he signed a 5-year, $1.4 million contract with the Cubs. And we had absolutely no offense until he came, and he provided the thump in the middle of our lineup. 78, when he came, he had 28 home runs, and but it was his 79 season that cemented him as my favorite player when he hit 48 home runs, and he's had a 288 average, 613 slugging percentage, and that was easily his best year of his career. And he was in that game that we talked about where the Cubs lost 23-22 to the Phillies, where he hit 3 home runs. One of them went 550 feet, and just brought gave me a lot of memories, and made back-to-back All-Star games. And we talked about one of the All-Star games. I injured All-Star game. Now I'm going back on the injured list. But anyway, before the contract ended, the Cubs traded him in February of '81 to the Mets. It was necessary to get rid of him because he had kind of burned a lot of bridges. But that's my number 5 is Dave Kingman.
Love King Kong Kingman. Yeah, he was a treat to watch. Well, my number 4 is Jeff Suppan. Soup came over, a very professional pitcher. He wasn't blow the ball by you. He's pitched to contact, a smart pitcher, changed speeds, moving the ball around. He was a Red Sox, became a free agent, came to the Cardinals in '04 and played for us for 3 years, '04, '05, '06, the ages of 29 to 31. In those years he was here, he won 16 games twice. And that's a good year in my book.
Oh yeah.
And 44 and 26 in the 3 years he was here. 3.94 ERA, and he pitched 642 innings. He ate up a lot of innings, and over the course of a year, an inning or two more a game over a season gives that bullpen some rest, and that's very important down the stretch. The Cardinals seem to always come down the stretch like a train, and a lot of that's because their pitchers go a little bit longer sometimes, for the better or worse. And the big thing for Jeff was in the playoffs in '06 when we went on to win the World Series. He was the MVP of the NLCS, and I'll never forget him. He was only 3 years here, but some great memories and a really good pitcher.
Awesome. Well, my number 4 is Moises Alou, who in 2002 signed a 3-year, $27 million contract. And um, he spent 3 seasons with the Cubs, and he was in the middle of that lineup that had Sosa, who'd they bring over? Eric Karros at the end of the year. So he provided some thump. He had 283 in his time for the Cubs, 76 home runs. And in the 2004 season, he was an all-star and he had 39 home runs. And he was just a force at the plate, especially in the 2003 postseason where he hit 388 with a 423 on base percentage in 12 games. And he was just a really great player for 3 years with the Cubs. He's the person who is probably best remembered for the Bartman incident where he threw the glove down, and he's never taken responsibility for it, which has just agitated me. He also reportedly would urinate on his hands to help his hitting. So, you know, uh, if a guy makes $27 million and he's still humble enough to tinkle on his own hands, hey, he's worth number 4 for me.
The famous Alou family too. He came from that famous,
Yes.
yeah, all those Alous that played in the big leagues.
Yes.
Well, my number 3, and this guy, I'd like to do a player spotlight on him eventually. I think he's underrated. He came out of nowhere and had a nice career with the Cardinals. We got Bob Tewksbury, and I know Bob. But first of all, he played for the Cubs, and I'm not going to say anything bad about the Cubs here because in the 2 years he was there, he was 0-4. You know, he was a young guy, he was struggling, and sometimes just a new scenery, or sometimes you just find it. Might not have nothing to do with the team he came from or the team he went to. So, but for some reason he came here, and at this time, he came here in 1989, and that was also the year I believe Gussie Bush passed away, and the family took over the team, and it just didn't seem like they had that fire like Gussie did. Gussie wanted to win. I don't think the next generation of Bushes, it wasn't that important to them. And so Joe Torre came over, managed. He did a great job for what he was given. But Bob Tewksbury comes over here, like I said, 0-4 in the 2 years before. He plays from 1989 to 1994. And basically, we're getting some old players that, been around a while, and all of our AAA players come up. Todd Zill, Pagnazzi, Gilkey, Langford, We had hard hitting Mark Whitten in right field. Um,
Oh,
the four
and he
home
hit
runs.
like 4 home runs and 12 RBIs in a doubleheader or something like that.
The Reds, take that, you Reds.
Yeah,
Yeah,
one of those home runs, he swung so hard the top button popped open on his shirt. I watched that game. I was like, wow.
oh, he came out of nowhere, but if he got a hold of one, it was going to go. But he played here from the ages of 28 to 33. And in those years, remember, he was 0-4 the two previous years. He was 67 and 42 with a 3.48 ERA, and he ate up innings. Not a hard thrower. Again, he was a pitcher. Inside, outside, up and down. He just tricked the batters, pitch to contact. 968.2 innings. He ate up some innings. And he won let's see. He was in the 1992 All-Star game. That 1992 was his big year. He was third for the Cy Young, and he was our number one starter that year. And I'm gonna give you a little for Cardinal fans out there, well, baseball fans. This was our pitching rotation in 1992. You had Bob Tewksbury, and I thought he was just a class guy. Omar Anaveras, uh, Real Camier from the Expos. We got him.
Oh,
Donovan,
wow.
my wife's least favorite player ever, Donovan Osborne. It seemed like when he went to the DL, he didn't come back for a couple of months, So she's like, I hope he's better than Donovan Osborne. That's like her love. That's her Mendoza line. It's Donovan Osborne. And Jose De Leon, who I always was a fan of. He looked like he was going to be a great pitcher, and he was good, but he never ascended to where I thought he was. But our bullpen back in '92, I'm getting off the path of Tewksbury. We did have Lee Smith, Big Lee. We had Mike Perez, who was our closer one year, and Todd Morrell was still around at that time. So we had a good team, and Joe Torre, God love him. He did the best he could with what he had, but he went on to bigger and better things. But Bob Tewksbury is my number 3, and I just think the world of him. I have some great memories of Bob Tewksbury.
Hmm. Well, my number 3 is Mr. Ben Zobrist. We signed him in 2016 for 4 years, $56 million, worth every penny of it because he delivered the biggest Cubs hit in Cub history when he drove home, uh, Almora in the 10th inning of the World Series. And I talked about him a little bit last week. What I loved about Zobrist is he was a Swiss Army knife. He played anywhere and everywhere, and he was what we needed in our lineup. Someone who could make contact, get the base hit, put the ball in the gap, get some doubles, and he just played the game right. So Zobrist, he hit 269 with the Cubs, had a 362 on base percentage with his time with the Cubs. He batted everywhere in the lineup. He even batted cleanup from time to time. So that's how much faith that Madden had in him. Remember, Madden had him as his Swiss Army knife in Tampa, so he was very familiar with Zobrist, and he actually made Zobrist an All-Star one year in Tampa, and he became an All-Star again with the Cubs. Um, he moved around frequently, and but what I loved about him was his leadership. He had won the World Series in 2015 with the Royals, came over in 2016 and brought all that experience with this young team that they could look up to. And um, maybe could have been number 2 or number 1, but I have 2 special players up there, and I'll get to those after your.
All right. Well, my number 2, and I always like this guy, Jason Isringhausen. And he came over, he was a Oakland A all of his career, went free agent, and those were the years. 2002 was when Tony La Russa was here. It seemed like we had a connection with Oakland. We got a ton of players from Oakland. I could go on and on about all the guys we got from Oakland, but Isringhausen was one of those guys that came over here. He was a great pitcher already when he came here. He was our closer. He pitched from 2002 to 2008 and then suffered an injury. So he was here from the ages of 29 to 35, 7 years. He is our all-time saves leader with 217. ERA of 2.66 over those 7 years, and 2 All-Star games. And 1 year he led the National League in saves. He had 47 saves in 04, and he was a part of that World Series championship in 06. And anyway, I like Jason, our all-time saves leader. The Cardinals have had a lot of good relievers over the years. It's a long list of Bruce Sutter and Al Hrabowski and Lindy McDaniel and Isringhausen, Mark Littell, just Mike Perez. We've had a lot of good relievers. Hicks through the years. So anyway, Jason Isringhausen is my number 2, and I just think the world of him.
And the Pride of Brighton, Illinois. Shout out to those
That's right.
in Brighton. All 3 of you, however many are in Brighton. I've been through Brighton a time or two. So my number 2 is the Hawk, Andre Dawson. Now, he signed in 87 for 1 year. What was going on is he had played in Montreal on a very hard turf, and his knees were suffering. His center fielder, and then he moved to right field. But he wanted to play on natural grass. Remember, if you don't remember, if you didn't know this, in the mid 80s, most stadiums were artificial turf. And he wanted to play somewhere where there was natural grass, and he always hit well in Chicago, and he wanted to go to Wrigley. Also, during this time in 1987, the MLB owners were colluding to keep salaries down, and that ended up in a lawsuit where players got compensated. So Dawson, literally, he and his agent, a guy with the unfortunate name of Dick Moss, walked up to the Cubs and said, "Here's a blank contract. You fill it in, and we'll play here." The Cubs, 1 year, $500,000, which was a bargain, and then there were some incentives that brought it up to 650. So the only thing that Dawson did was, at 32, even though he was a 6-time Gold Glove winner, even though he was a 3-time All-Star, he went to the Cubs and he had a monster year. He hit 49 home runs in 87. He had never hit anything close to that before and was nowhere close to that after that. He was, 25 to low 30s home run type person. All of a sudden, he comes to Chicago and he hits 49 home runs in 87. Now, the ball was juiced a bit in 87. McGuire, as a rookie, hit 49 or 48 or something like that. Jack Clark, I think, batted one-handed that year for the Cardinals and hit over 35 home runs. Home runs were flying, but the Hawk was flying the highest with his home run total. 137 RBIs. He won the MVP for a last place team. So they did re-up him, and he stayed with the Cubs for 6 years. He never equaled those totals, but he had 6 very productive years. Ended up in the Hall of Fame. And we got all this. He took us to the playoffs. He was a key part of our playoff run in 89, which sadly ended. He was a leader. He would go out to right field, and all the right field fans would do the bowing to him, and he would do it back to them. One of my favorite memories was he got in an argument with an umpire on seat cushion night and was thrown out of the game, and they pelted the field with garbage and stuff. And then the next day he was interviewed, and he was a nice guy, but he was a no-nonsense guy. And in the interview, instead of being contrite, like, yeah, I shouldn't have done that, boy, he doubled down. Terrible call by the umpire, don't blame myself, would have done the same thing over again, so on and so forth. Loved Andre Dawson, great Cub for 6 years, and he's my number 2 as far as free agent acquisitions.
I love Andre Dawson. In 87, I'm just going to tell a quick story here. I was in the Navy. And by the way, happy Veterans Day to all of our veterans listening out there. I was in the Navy up at Great Lakes, Illinois, and I would take the train down, and the season had just ended, 87. And by the way, Dawson had won the MVP, but Ozzie finished second in the MVP rating. And I think Andre deserved it. Anyway, they were fixing the field for wintertime. They had shovels and rakes. And I just was walking around the stadium, grabbed a rake, went on the field, and I stood in the circle. The grass was worn where Andre Dawson stood. And I was out there standing there getting some pictures of myself. They finally threw me out there when I was in the bullpen acting like I'm warming up, and they said, "Get the hell out of here." Can you believe it? Can you believe what kind of hospitality is that? So anyway, that's the kind of fan I am. I took a chance on going to jail, but I went on the field at Wrigley about a week after the season was over, and they were getting the field ready for wintertime. I love Andre Dawson, though. All right, my number one, and we alluded to him earlier in the Mike Matheny one, was Chris Carpenter. I think that's the greatest free agent we ever signed, and I did not know that Mike Matheny had anything to do with that. He had played for Toronto. I always thought of him. Yeah, I always thought of him. Yeah, and he was a good friend with Roy Halladay, which will come up a little bit later. But he played for the Cardinals from 2004 to 2012, 9 years. He did have a history of injuries. You can say maybe this, maybe that if he hadn't been injured, but he some great moments with the Cardinals. He was 95 and 44. When he was on our team, he was our big game pitcher. He was the ace of the staff. He came to play. His ERA was 3.07 over those 9 years. Three-time All-Star, one-time Cy Young Award winner, a 20-game winner, 2 World Series he was on. And he was just a game. He was known as a gamer. If he would give you everything he had. And my all-time favorite game as far as a pitching duel as a Cardinal fan was, of course, we won it. That helps out, but it was the Roy Halladay, Chris Carpenter, 2006, was it? A 1-0 game. Oh, 2011 NL.
Yeah, it was 2011.
Yes, 2011 NLDS. And that, the Phillies were favored, and we ended up winning that game going on and winning it that year against Texas. So that's my number one free agent right there.
Well, my number one's a no-brainer. Johnny Lester, 2015, we signed him for 6 years, $155 million. We would have never signed him if we didn't have Theo Epstein, who had worked with him in Boston. When Theo came over, people started taking us serious, and that included free agents. That's how we got Zobrist. That's how we landed Lester. People wanted to play for Theo. And when Lester came, he turned us into contenders every year. 2015, we weren't supposed to contend. And next thing we know, we win 99 games and we're in the playoffs. And his entire career with the Cubs was he was the top of the rotation guy. There was one year where Arrieta just had this stupid year, but the solid guy for the entirety of his contract was Lester. And aside from being the World Series hero and all that, which I talked about yesterday, what I really remember about Lester was in his later years of the contract, when he wasn't throwing as hard, he pitched. He never gave in to a hitter. It was corner to corner. It was up and down, and it was intensity. And every year, it seemed like he would have one horrible game for the Cubs. I'm talking 2 innings, 8 runs. And you'd think, gosh, he lost it. But every time he would bounce back. His ERA with the Cubs was 3.54, 174 games, lost 41. But in his 12 postseason games with the Cubs, he had a 2.44 ERA. So we paid him to pitch big games, and he pitched big games. So what are the 5 greatest trades in both of our team's history? This was a little bit more fun for me. Who's your number? It was,
yeah. You want to go first on this one?
Oh, sure. My number 5 happened in 2003. I can't believe this was a trade within the division. We got Aramis Ramirez and Kenny Lofton from the Pirates for Bobby Hill, who? Jose Hernandez, no, not the pitcher, and Matt Bruback. I don't know. So we basically gave now Bobby Hill was a really good prospect, and Jose Hernandez, he was a solid infielder. He had a career. But Aramis Ramirez turned out to be an absolute stud. He was good in Pittsburgh, and he was even better in Chicago. So of course the Pirates were always wanting to shed payroll, so that's how we got them. And we were having a drive for the division title or wild card. And so Lofton settled in as our leadoff man, and he hit 327 for us for the remainder of the season and had a 381 OPS, a lot of speed. Ramirez spent 8 years in the middle of our order. With the Cubs, he hit 294 with a 531 slugging percentage, and he's sixth all time with the Cubs. He hit 239 home runs with the Cubs, and he made two All-Star teams. And for what we gave up, people who really didn't have much of a career, to get Kenny Lofton, who was instrumental in that stretch drive in 2003, and Aramis Ramirez, who was the thump on our lineup for 6 years, that was a really good trade.
Great trade. Great trade. Well, my number 5 is this trade went down October 21st, 1981. I'm gonna tell a little bit about this. Whitey Herzog just came here and he was revamping the whole team. This was the Bob Sykes for Willie McGee deal. Willie was on a fast track to make it to the pros. Make it to the big leagues, the majors. If you remember 1981, the Yankees had just won World Series in 77, 78, and they were going to the World Series in 81, and they end up going and losing to the Dodgers Fernando Mania that year. So they were a stacked team. Willie was on their 40-man roster. He was an outfielder at AAA, and Don Mattingly was in the same outfield with him. Mattingly was an outfielder in the minor leagues, and Mattingly said Willie was the best player on their AAA team. He was on the 40-man roster, and what happened was the Yankees signed Dave Winfield. They had to move somebody off that roster. And instead of losing Willie in the Rule 5 draft, they decided, we'll try to get something. And here are the Cardinals. Sometimes things just fall in your lap. And the Cardinals had a left-handed pitcher because the Yankees were just stacked, named Bob Sykes. Nothing against Bob Sykes. He was a decent player, had a nice career. I think it was like a 6-year career in the big leagues. We trade him over for this Willie McGee, and he goes down to the minors. That year we got a kid from Milwaukee who I thought was going to be a blue chipper named David Green. And David Green pulled his hamstring, and Willie came up and never went back down. So Willie has been a fantastic all-time favorite Cardinal. If you go to the stadium to this day, you still see Willie McGee jerseys out in the stands. He's just a likable, hardworking, humble, good player, and he was a big part of those Whitey Herzog years where it was Coleman and Lonnie Smith and Ozzie Smith and him just running the base pads, running amok. I think I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, but I think he's in the Hall of really, really good players. And he played 13 years with us. He won an MVP, 2 Gold Gloves, and he won 2 batting titles in 1985 and 90. And he was a part of 3 pennant winners and 1 world championship. Love Willie McGee. So many great memories. And so number 5 for me was the Bob Sykes, Willie McGee move.
Yeah, Willie McGee is my favorite Cardinal of all time. I really liked him.
That's a good one.
Classy, humble guy. And I remember the 85 year when he won the MVP. Herzog said, I don't get it. Pitcher will throw the first pitch a foot over his head. Will he swing at it? Throw the next pitch in the dirt. Willie will swing at it. The third pitch, he throws it right down the middle. Willie gets a hit. So
that's right.
My number 4 is the first trade that was made under the Theo regime was Anthony Rizzo. We got from the Padres for Andrew Kashner in 2012. And this is one of the most lopsided trades in Cub history. Kashner was a hard-throwing pitcher, and he was one of our top prospects, and we thought that he would blossom into something. Rizzo he had known Theo because Boston originally had Theo in their minor leagues, and that's how Rizzo knew Theo. And Rizzo, that's when he got his cancer, was when he was in the minor leagues with um, with the, I almost said the Braves. Boston Braves haven't been around forever, with the Red Sox. So he goes to San Diego, and in San Diego, their GM was Jed Hoyer, friend of Theo, who's now one of the I some kind of executive for the Cubs, but he was our GM for a while. But he goes to San Diego, and then we hire Theo. Theo brings Jed in as the GM, and they target Rizzo, who had a cup of coffee for the Padres in 2011, just didn't hit it all. So they traded for Rizzo. Now Rizzo, people is kind of a legend, but people don't realize he was not the most highly touted prospect in the world. But they believed in not just his ability, but his drive and his desire. So when he came here, he came to a bad team and instantly became one of the faces of the franchise and eventually evolved to the face of the franchise. He had 277 in his 8 years with the Cubs, 217 home runs, three All Star teams, three Gold Gloves, one Platinum Glove, finished in top four MVP twice, and he led the Cubs to a championship. In 2014, we were playing the Reds, and we were a bad team. And Aroldis Chapman was pitching, and he threw at one of the Cubs. And Rizzo started barking from the bench, and Chapman just kind of like, oh, you're the Cubs, you know. So when Rizzo gets on the field, Rizzo's playing first base. He starts in with the entire bench of the Reds. And then he challenged the entire bench to a fight. And Rizzo's walking by himself towards the Reds bench, and the whole bench is coming out after him. It was at that time that many people say that's when the Cubs really said, okay, we're not going to be pushed around anymore. We're going to be a different ball club. We're not going to be the laughing stock anymore. And Anthony Rizzo became the face of that turnaround and that toughness that led us to five straight playoff appearances, three National League Championship Series, and a World Series championship. So Anthony Rizzo for Andrew Casher is number 4.
Very good. That's a great story about that. Sometimes a good fight or two players getting into it, the team rallies around. Sometimes it's a big turning point. Well, my number 4 was December 13th, 2003. We had a player, JD Drew, all the talent in the world, but there's been stories about him going down to rehab and not hurrying back or wanting to take a day off. I remember Fernando Vina one time, LaRussa gave him the day off and he didn't want off. And he said, what, you want me to be like JD Drew? Like JD Drew was an example they used. So we took JD Drew, who was from Georgia, and Eli Marrero, our backup catcher, sent him to Atlanta. And we got Jason Marquis, who became a pitcher for us for 2 or 3 years. Ray King, who was a big part of our bullpen for 2 years. And this kid down in the minors named Adam Wainwright. And I tell you, I'm smiling. I can't stop smiling thinking about this trade. We stole these guys from JD Drew goes down there. He's from Atlanta. He stays 1 year. Boom, he's gone. Eli Marrero's there 1 year and didn't do anything really remarkable. And he leaves. Well, Adam Wainwright is still with the Cardinals to this day. And Adam Wainwright, again, I think he's just going to go down. That's a big part of our history, and he's been a big part of it. He has had 2 major injuries. He's not the same pitcher he was his first 8 years. He would throw the ball past people. He was a power pitcher, and then there was some time in there where I didn't know if he was still going to stay with the team or stay in the pros, and he has become a pitcher where it just moves the ball around. The other team knows the big curveball's coming and they can't hit it. And that is a fan that is so fun to watch. They know it's coming. He's got a backdoor slider and he just mixes them up and he gives you everything he's got. I'm not a fan of the DH. And one reason was Adam could win. He could out hit the other pitchers, a lot of them, and he could sacrifice. There at the last year, they didn't have the DH. I think he had 8 sacrifice bunts. He was a complete player. And he, in the history of the Cardinals, he's number 3 in wins and he's number 2 in strikeouts. And of course, Bob Gibson holds both of those records for the Cardinals. But as a player that came up, he was a minor leaguer. I think we knew he was something special. And we just threw J. And the reason JD Drew was needed by the Braves was they lost Gary Sheffield and they were looking for a replacement for Sheffield. So that just kind of fell on our lap again. Another team's needs, and we get something special for it. So that's my number 4, Adam Wainwright, right there.
Good trade. Good trade.
That's a good trade.
And it's still going on. He'll be there
Yes.
next year. So. My number 3 trade is Jake Arrieta and Pedro Strop from the Orioles for Scott Feldman and Steve Clevenger. This was 2014. Feldman, well, let me back up. The Cubs had a pitching coach, Chris Bosio, who had a decent career with the Brewers and the Mariners. Bosio was, to me, he was Chris Duncan, or not Chris, Dave Duncan light. He was a very good pitching coach. And what he was good at doing was getting these middle of the road pitchers and pumping them to a point where we could trade them, giving them trade value. Feldman was pitching good in 2014 for the Cubs. He had a 3.46 ERA and 15 starts. So the Orioles, they were in need for pitching. They were contending, and Steve Clevenger's one of our backup catchers. We sent Feldman and Clevenger for Pedro Strop. Arrieta was the throw-in. Now, Strop, let's get to Arrieta first. Arrieta in 2014, the second half was really good. I remember sending my dad a text. There was like 4 or 5 starts in a row. Arrieta was unhittable. Now, this is 2014. Nobody's paying attention to him. And I sent my dad a text. When he pitches, it's much TV. He was that good. 2015, he had a Gibson-like year. You couldn't hit him. And then in 2016, he had another really good year. He threw 2 no-hitters for the Cubs. He won the Cy Young in 2015. He won a few games in the World Series in 2016. Then it caught up with him. Arrieta always threw across his body. And one of his problems in Baltimore was trying to get him to not do that. He wasn't having success. When he came to the Cubs, they said, "Hey, pitch how you feel," and he was just dynamite. And when you pitch across your body, it's just tough on the body, and so that's why he didn't have the staying power. So he had a really good Cub career, but Strop is kind of the one that people forget about. In his 6 years with the Cubs, Pedro Strop has a 2.90 ERA. He has a 1.04 WHIP. And, this is 7 years he played for the Cubs. He made 411 career appearances, and he's number 6 in franchise history with appearances. He holds the Cub record of 120 holds. He was not the closer. He would close if necessary. Sometimes you need someone else to step up. He would do that. But he was so good as that setup guy. He was so good in the 7th and 8th inning. I felt like he could have been one of those setup guys who could have been an all-star a few of those years. He was the bridge that took us from starter to closer in our really good years. And Stropey always wore his hat, like this, and
yeah.
And I loved watching him pitch. So not only did we get a guy who became a Cy Young winner, World Series hero, and a legend in Cub lore, we also got a very, very good reliever that's often overlooked. And we gave them Feldman, who after he left Bosio just became Scott Feldman again. And we also, Clevenger was always just a backup. So great trade for the Cubs.
That's a really good one. Well, my number 3 went down December 10th, 1981. So we're talking about the Whitey Herzog years right there. And Whitey, this is a magic of Whitey deal, because when this deal went down, the average most Cardinal fans weren't really excited about it. We had a shortstop named Gary Templeton, and we traded him and two other players who all played in the big leagues for the other team. For the Padres, Ozzie Smith. So this everybody remembers it as the Templeton for Ozzie Smith deal, but we sent over there Sixto Lascano, who we got from the Brewers, and Luis De Leon, and we got Ozzie Smith, Steve Mura, who was in our rotation that year, and then Al Olmstein, who played a little bit in the big leagues. But this trade went down December 10th, 1981. When 82, we win the World Series. And Ozzie Smith was a big part of that. I mean, that was like the icing on the cake right there, getting Ozzie. Now, the reason this wasn't a popular move was Gary Templeton was an incredible hitter. He had a 305 lifetime batting average when he played for the Cardinals. He played 6 years here. And Ozzie had like a 225 lifetime batting average. But Ozzie was the wizard, made these incredible plays. But Templeton he was maybe a little step down defensively, but he could make the plays, but then sometimes he'd mess up a routine play. What was going on with both players was Gary Templeton that year. There's a famous incident where he makes a hand gesture at some of the Cardinal fans. And Whitey wasn't going to have none of that. There's a famous picture. If you go on YouTube, you can see the image of Whitey and him. It looks like he's grabbing Templeton and bringing him into the dugout. A lot of people don't know this though, but Ozzie had played 4 years with the Padres, and he was in a contract dispute with him. I didn't know that until I started doing a little research on that. I didn't know that part of the equation. So really, we were swapping shortstops, and Templeton was an incredible hitter. He went on to play 10 years with the Padres, but he had some injuries, some leg. He would steal a lot of bases. I remember he was a switch hitter. He had 100 hits from both sides of the plate in a single season.
Yeah.
I mean, he was special, but he had some leg problems. And his best years were with St. Louis, but vice versa, Ozzie's best years were with the Cardinals. And that was again the Whitey Herzog. I think Whitey just seen something. There's an old story about Ozzie wasn't going to hit many home runs. He hit a few. He was a switch hitter as well. But if he hit the ball on the ground, Whitey had to give him $1. And if he hit the ball in the air, Ozzie had to give Whitey $1. So they would do that because Whitey wanted to hit it on the ground and just run. And Ozzie ends up making himself a pretty good hitter. Lifetime batting averages, Templeton ended up at the end of when it was all said and done, 272. But Ozzie worked himself up to a 262 hitter, and he hit 300 a couple times. Ozzie Hall of Famer. I have so many great memories. There's a play at Wrigley Field. I don't know if he overran the bag, but he threw the ball behind his back to Tommy Herr for a double, and they got a double play going. Balls up the middle. In those days, you could take the shortstop and second baseman out on a double play. You couldn't catch Ozzie. He was jumping over them to each side and getting those plays. And of course, we had Keith Hernandez at first base digging everything out. So I won't go on. Have a tendency to go on and on, but Ozzie Smith is my number 3.
Well, a couple things about that. Templeton had an attitude problem, and he 1 year, I think it was 79 or 80, he didn't get voted to start the All-Star game when he had the best stats. And he said, well, if I ain't starting, I ain't departing. So
I
he,
remember that.
he
Yeah.
kind of had a bad attitude, and Ozzie's attitude was much better. And I think that's one of the reasons that it was easy for Herzog, who was the general manager at the time, and also the manager, to make that trade, because I'm upgrading a little bit defensively, I'm downgrading a little bit offensively, but the attitude is going to be, and this guy's effervescence is going to permeate through the clubhouse, and we will be a much better team. Whitey was a master at finding people who were gamers. he could overlook the statistics and find the people that he wanted. So that was great. Second thing about Ozzie is that he did my favorite play ever by a middle infielder. He was playing for the Padres, and he went to dive for a ball and took a bad hop, and he reached up with his bare hand and caught and threw the guy out. YouTube that. I'll put that in the comments. That is, it's just,
It's amazing.
It's superhuman. Yes. So my number two trade happened in 1982. We sent Ivan de Jesus to Philadelphia for Larry Boa and a throw-in named Ryan Sandberg. Now, Boa wanted out of Philadelphia. He had been there for years, and he was not enamored with the direction the Phillies were going in. And it was going to be Boa for DeJesus. And Dallas Green, who had managed the Phillies, who was now the GM of the Cubs, said, okay, but why don't you throw in that Sandberg kid? Okay. All Sandberg, okay, Boa played a couple seasons for the Cubs, 1 year as a starter. Another year he split time with Sean Dunston, and we went to the playoffs with Boa, but he was clearly at the end of his career. But Sandberg went on to play 15 seasons with the Cubs, 82 through 94. Then he retired. Then he came out of retirement, played 96, 97. He hit 285, hit 282 home runs, number 5 in Cubs history. He made 10 All-Star games. He won 9 Gold Gloves, 7 Silver Sluggers. He was the 1984 National League MVP, Hall of Famer, and he's one of the best Cubs of all time. I did not put him at number 1 for this reason. Twice he's done this, and he gets a pass because he's a Cub legend, and I'm a Cub fan, but I'm also a realist. In 95, we had a team that could contend. We were in it till the end. 94, Sandberg retires because of personal reasons. He's going through a divorce, so on and so forth. Players get divorced all the time. I kind of looked at that as, okay, you quit on your team. It wasn't a strict retirement because when the divorce and everything was fine, he said, oh, I'm coming back. And he came back for a couple more years. That told me he kind of quit on his team. Then when he was managing the Phillies, he just up and quit in the middle of the season a second time. So Sandberg, even though he's a great player, and we all have the Sandberg game in Cub and Cardinal history, that is one of the greatest games ever, no matter what side you're on, because he hit for a cycle that game. But I would put him at number 1, but this trade's number 2 because that's just tainted him a little bit, in my view, as a player and as a manager. So number 2, Sandberg and Boa for Ivan de Jesus. So.
Great trade. I really like Ryan Sandberg. Classy guy, represented the Cubs. When you thought of the Cubs, you thought of Ryan Sandberg in those days.
He was the new Mr. Cub.
And every year in the All-Star game, you had your Cub Ryan Sandberg at second and Ozzie Smith at short. It was great seeing those two play together. It's like we're gonna have a little detente, stop the battle, and we're gonna play together for the benefit of the National League. I really like that, and I think of him and Dallas Green bringing him over.
I took a girlfriend to a game, and we sat in right field bleachers. And twice in this game, I've watched a lot of baseball from different vantage points, and this is on turf at the time. Player hit the ball twice in this game, and it's going into right field for a single. And out of nowhere came Sandberg, gloved it, threw the guy out. And I'm like, when it happened the first time, I thought I must not have been paying attention. He couldn't have got there that fast. Second time it happened later in the game, and I see there's a hit. All of a sudden there is again. It's like, my gosh, TV doesn't do this guy justice. He is really, really good at second base. Great reflexes, great instincts. He earned those 9 Gold Gloves.
Fantastic player. Well, my number 2, and I love history, the baseball history. This one we're going to go back. This is unless you got mine beat right here. This is December 20th, 1926. This was the Roger Hornsby for Frankie Frisch deal. Roger Hornsby, the 3rd greatest batting average of all time, a 358 lifetime batting average. There's only 2 people with better lifetime batting averages. He hit 403 times. And that's only happened just a handful of times. And he did it 3 times. Won MVPs. He was a Triple Crown winner. He later becomes a player manager. In 1926, he leads the Cardinals to their very first world championship. Everything looks like it's going great, but evidently, Roger Hornsby, sometimes great players have a little trouble with just us mortals. They're so great. He wouldn't read, he wouldn't go to the movies. He didn't want to strain his eyes. He demanded a lot of his players. He was the final out in the 26 World Series. Babe Ruth tried to steal a base for the final out of the World Series. He's the guy that caught it and tagged Ruth out. So he's a legend in St. Louis. But he didn't get along with the owner and the general manager, which was Branch Rickey, very famous. Started the minor leagues, really got that going for the Cardinals. A lot of great history, goes on to the Dodgers. He's a legend himself. He would go to the press and badmouth the owner and the GM, which is not a good move, and just tell everybody their personal business. And they decide we got to get rid of Roger Hornsby. Meanwhile, with the Giants, John McGraw, second most wins ever, maybe the greatest manager ever, because Connie Mack, the number one guy, owned the Philadelphia A's. So that's kind of fair. But Connie Mack or John McGraw was over there, and Frankie Frisch hated John McGraw because he would just cuss and yell and scream at you. And one day he just leaves. He takes off. So they got to get rid of Frisch. We got to get rid of Hornsby. So we swap them. Roger Hornsby, great player and all, but Frankie Frisch comes over here, the Fordham Flash, that's his nickname. And it becomes a legend in St. Louis. This guy spent 11 years with the Cardinals, got 1,582 hits, stole 195 bases, and he had a little 105 home runs because that was a big home run time. His batting average lifetime is 312. Now, Hornsby is 358, but 312, that's a great lifetime batting average. And he was a part of the famous Gas House gang, the Wild Ruffians. He won an MVP, 2 World Series, 31 beating the A's and 34 when we beat the Tigers. And he's also a Hall of Famer. But when I think of the Gas House gang, he's one of the 5 guys I think of. So Frankie Frisch, what a trade. Made both teams, but just a little side note on that story. Roger Hornsby goes to the Giants and they can't stand him either. And he only spent 1 year there. So he got out of town. So we got to keep Frankie all those years. So that's my number 2 all-time great Cardinal trade.
Well, before I hit number 1, there are a couple that I debated. I had 7 that I was looking at. And the reason I didn't include these 2 is because they were way before my time. Number 1 was we got Mordecai Brown, Three Finger Brown from the Cardinals, and he pitched for us in the early part of the century. We won a World Series with him, but I didn't want to put that trade in there because that happened in antiquity. The second one was a pitcher named Hippo Vaughn who came over in the 20s. Who was one of the great Cub pitchers, greatest Cub pitchers of all time. But I kind of thought, I'm gonna take the old timers out. This one is kind of an old timer. I did not see him pitch for the Cubs until he went back there to finish his career in the 80s. But my number 1 is Ferguson Jenkins, Adolfo Phillips, and John Herenstein went from the Phillies to the Cubs, and we gave up Larry Jackson and Bob Buell. Now, Fergie Jenkins pitched from the Cubs from 66 through 73, and then he came back for 82 and 83 seasons. He posted a 3.20 ERA, a 1.12 whip. He threw, hold on to your hats, 154 complete games for the Cubs in those years. He threw 29 shutouts. He made 3 All-Star teams. He won a Cy Young Award, and he finished in the top 3 voting 4 other times. And remember, this is at a time when you have Gibson, Marichal, Drysdale,
Koufax.
Koufax, who's in there, the Perry brothers. This was a time of great pitching. Jackson, he posted a 2.95 ERA in parts of 3 seasons with Philly. Then he was gone. And Buell, Spent 2 years with the Phillies, didn't do much and retired in 67. So we really got the best of that deal. And Jenkins was elected to the Hall of Fame in 1991. And we retired as number 31 in 2009. And Fergie Jenkins has just been a class act. Great ambassador for baseball, not just for the Cubs, but for baseball. He had great success when he went to Texas. Just a wonderful human being, and as JJ can attest to, probably has the biggest hands of any mortal on the face of the earth.
Yeah, Andre Giant size hands. Well, number one for me, and I'm not bringing this up to do
I know
anything.
I knew it was coming.
You knew it was coming. This
Yeah,
was a
I'm
day.
I'm the idiot who suggested this segment. Why did I do this?
Well, it's legendary. This is a day that will live in infamy. June 15th, 1964. Ernie Briglio? Is that how you say it?
Broglio.
Briglio? I don't even know his name. For Lou Brock. Lewis Clark Brock from Arkansas, by the way. I always shout out to my Arkansas brothers. Lou Brock. Ernie, now I'm not putting the Cubs down here. Ernie was a good pitcher. The year before, he was 18-8, and 2 years before that, he won 21 games.
Yeah,
He was a good pitcher.
Stud.
He was a real good pitcher. But after this trade, he only played 3 more years and went 7-19. He suffered some injuries, and that's just sometimes how the game goes. Had a nice career, nothing special. Well, 2 very good years. They just happened to be with the Cardinals. We get this cat Lou Brock, and that year we went over the 1964 Cardinals. We were in 8th place. Brock comes over, Shannon comes up, and we're on fire. And he played 16 seasons with the Cardinals. One of the few players with 3,000 hits. You know, there's only a handful of guys with 3,000 hits in the history of the game. Becomes the greatest base stealer. Not only gets 3,000 hits, base stealer, 3 World Series. If I'm not mistaken, Lou may have one of the greatest batting averages in World Series history, too.
Yeah, I think it was like 392 for the number of World Series
Yeah,
that he
3
played
World
in.
Series he played in.
It,
3.
it was way up there.
He's the face from the early 60s. Him and Gibson, I consider those the Gibson Brock years right there. I mean, we had some other great players too, but those 2 guys, both Hall of Famers, on that left field wall, both of them, number 20. Growing up, I think more kids, that was their favorite player. I was a Ted Simmons guy just because I was a catcher. But Lou Brock, that every kid, about 8 out of 10 of them, that was their guy. Lou, they love Lou. And I love Lou. We would play wiffle ball outside, and the dad of my friends would say, "Hey, Lou's coming up." We'd all run in there and watch him take his bat and go back out and play some wiffle ball. 3 pennants, 2 world championships, 6 all-star games, and a Hall of Fame man. And we miss you, Lou, and a Hall of Fame player. And that's my number 1.
And to rub insult into injury, he got his 3,000th hit against the Cubs.
Dennis Lamp, I think.
Dennis Lamp is pitching, and he hits a line drive off Lamp's hand and injures him. But how it's still cursing us after all these years, but
you never know sometimes. You just never know how a trade's going to work out, you know.
Yeah. Well, let's open up some baseball cards.
Oh, yeah. This is actually my favorite thing we do, and I think a lot of people out there have talked about this. This is their favorite thing. You want to go first, Vince?
Sure, I'll go first. I am opening up Dondras, and see the year here. 1991 Dondras. We talked about him last week a little bit. Paul O'Neill. Great Red and Yankee player. Pitcher for the Mariners, Gene Harris.
I remember Gene. I don't know much about him, but yeah.
Oh, catcher for the Twins, who had a good career, Brian Harper.
Oh, yeah. Pittsburgh Pirate.
Yeah, I think he did play for the Pirates too. I got Oakland A's great Reggie Harris. Not really. I don't know who he is.
I was thinking. I didn't recall him.
I also got Jose De Jesus. Don't know who he is either. I'm not picking the winners. Oh, Now this guy had a few really good years for Houston. Glenn Davis.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh
he
yeah.
had some power. Ooh, Cardinal, former Cardinal, Craig Wilson. I think I've had him before on
Oh
here.
yeah. Utility guy.
Yeah. Oh, oh, this guy had a pretty good career for the Tigers. Travis Fryman, third baseman, made a few All Star teams. Uh, very good underrated outfielder for the Blue Jays. By this time, he's with the Yankees. Jesse Barfield.
Oh yes.
Second baseman who also played for the Cubs, but this is his Dodger years. Jose Vizcaino. Uh, Braves pitcher Marvin Freeman. Used to watch him on the Superstation TBS.
Yeah,
Uh, Ernie Riles from the Giants. Uh, Mel Rojas, who was a one-time closer
oh
for the
yes.
Expos.
Like those hats. Love those Expo hats.
Uh, Greg Smith for the Cubs. Yeah. A generic name for a generic player. I hope none of these players ever watch this. I'm going to go and
I,
leave his so, and Scott Aldred. So this was not the greatest pack in the world, but hey, it's a pack. They're not all winners.
I have the 89 tops. I'm a tops guy. Sometimes I venture off to see what the other ones look like. I don't know if you guys remember that, you collectors out there. They used to have cellophane uh things, and what happens is all the kids would pick through them, and if you had a big player on top or bottom, that's the ones they would buy.
Yeah.
So this is the 89. Now it's a thicker too, so you got more cards. And look at this, in 1989, this was 79 cents. Yeah, 79 cents right there. So anyway, I'm going through here. Oh, there was I love it. They used to have all-star cards. This is Andy Van Slyke's all-star card right there. Ex-Cardinal. I always like Van Slyke.
I have been in his house.
Van Slyke's too. That's the second one I know about. Yeah. Oh, Ron Jacober. Ron Jacober was the other one. Yeah. Were you invited or was that
I've been there a few times. One time he had a batting cage in his basement, a regulation size batting cage. That was really cool. I'm not kidding you. Van Slyke's they know how to reproduce. I mean, Van Slyke must be Bunny in French. They had a lot of kids. And I would be walking through their house and there would be a pile of kids' toys right next to a gold glove, um, uh, a half-eaten sandwich from a kid on a plate on a table, a silver slugger. It was just kind of weird.
Yeah. Andy Van Slyke still lives in St. Louis. I think anyway. All right, here's a guy. They thought he had a nice career. Von Hayes.
Von Hayes.
Von Hayes. I think they traded 5 guys for him.
5 for 1. Von
Five
Hayes.
for one. And yeah. Oh, Tim, I'm terrible with names. Truffle. He was like a extra
Tim
player.
Tuffle played for the Twins. Yeah, Twins in the Mets. Yeah.
This guy, I invested a bunch of money. Well, as a kid, $10 on Danny Tartable rookie cards.
Oh,
And Danny Tartable was a good player, but never became the player a lot of people thought he would become. There he is with the Royals, the Kansas City Royals.
yeah, he had good years. 30 home runs a few times.
Oh my gosh. Oh, some of the gum fell out, by the way. Oh, it still smells like gum.
I would not put that in your mouth.
Oh, the great George Brett. Look at that at KC. Yes. We love you, George. You're always invited to come on. Yes. Yes. We're always invited to come here and hang out with us. Yeah. I'll make you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. There's old George Brett right there, the greatest Royal of them all. Oh, Louisiana Lightning.
Ron Guidry.
Yeah. There you go. And yeah, I loved Ron Guidry.
Had that insane 78 season, 25 wins, and
he had a big chaw in his mouth, and they hit a line drive back at him. And you can see some footage of some things coming back up right there. Julio Franco. That's when he's with the Indians. And he later came back many years later, and he was maybe close to 50 and played for the Atlanta Braves. Do you remember that?
Yeah, He played for a long time.
Here's an underrated player, Jimmy Key.
Ah,
Yeah,
lefty for the Blue Jays.
yes, very good during those World Series years. Roberto Alomar with the Padres.
Hmm.
Seems like they had a lot of superstars that came in and out of there.
Yeah, Roberto Alomar is the spitting image of his dad.
Here,
Only hardcore baseball fans will know that joke there.
Jesse Orosco.
Oh,
My memory on Jesse is when the Mets won the World Series in '86. He got the final out, threw his glove in the air, and everybody ran on the mound and celebrated. Jesse Orosco. Mike Sosha,
no.
player, and I remember he could block the plate about as good as anybody back in those days.
That collision with him and Jack Clark.
Oh yes,
Yeah, that was wicked.
that was vicious.
Two
Oh,
big guys.
it says Bob Rogers, but I think didn't he go by Buck Rogers, the coach of the
Yeah,
Expos?
yeah.
Yeah, it says Bob. I've got some old Roberto Clemente cards, and it says Bob Clemente, but it's Roberto Clemente. He didn't like that either. He wanted to say because his name was Roberto, but for some reason there's some old pirate cards that says Bob Clemente. So anyway, this guy here, this guy was tough. Kevin Mitchell. I don't. There was a play down the left field line at Busch Stadium, and he overran it, and he put his bare hand up and caught it barehanded. And,
Yes.
and during those years, the Giants had Matt Williams, Will Clark, Kevin Mitchell, and you couldn't get through there. Seemed like every other inning they came up to bat. You know, Kevin Seitzer, another had a nice career. There he is with the Kansas City Royals. Let's see, Tim Wallach. Oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
Tim Wallach right there. I always thought of a lot of that guy. Oh, I don't know if you got any thoughts on this guy. Otis Nixon.
Speedster center field for the Braves teams in the early 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I hadn't heard this name in years. Joe Youngblood. I think he played with the Cardinals maybe a
He
year.
played with the Cardinals, played with the Cubs for a while. Did he play with wasn't he the guy who I think he was playing for the Mets
Yeah, he was a Met.
day game and he got traded and then played for the team he got traded for that night.
I'll
I
have
think
to look that up. You might be right on that. I remember
he's
that
only playing
happening.
Major League Baseball, whoever did that.
He had a 14-year career, according to this. Hey, I'd take that any day. Here's one of your guys, Jamie Moyer. Yeah, Moyer.
Pitched till he was about 100.
This guy, a great Cub, a great Cardinal from Louisiana, big old Lee Smith.
Oh,
Yeah. He was during the Tory years for us. Oh, maybe one of the greatest contracts. And he's still getting paid to this day.
Bobby Bonilla.
Bobby Bo. That's right. There's a famous video of him getting into it with a reporter about, do you feel froggy? Huh? And he's putting a shirt on. I don't know if you see that video, but he's kind of being bullying the reporter. I don't know what went on, but it's on the MLB channel. They play that probably once a year of him getting into it with a reporter. And that's my cards right there.
All righty. Next week, I do believe we have a guest lined up. Is that correct?
Yeah, we sure do.
Okay, we have a guest. We will have the ghost of Babe Ruth on here. So
Andrew Gieselman, and
you won't see him. Oh, we also got Andrew Gieselman on here.
Yeah, and he's a beer man. So he'll have some stories for us, and he's a comedian in St. Louis and a dear friend, a good guy. So and then we got until next Wednesday for you to get your picks in for our first contest of the year. And again, here are, if I can figure out how to move my hands, here are the 5 free agents right there. Aaron Judge, Anthony Rizzo, Carlos Correa, and Jock Peterson, and Andrew Benintendi. And then don't forget to put down how many years you think Carlos Correa is going to get in his contract. I have no clue. He might take a short 1-year deal. He's a young guy. He might get a 10-year deal. It's gonna be fun. Let's see who's the best general manager out there. Can you predict where these guys are gonna go? So anyway, and I'll show the beer mug one more time. Right there.
That's sharp.
Yeah, right there. And our good friends from Budweiser.
And remember, email your picks to one Cardinal, one Cub, or one card, not Cardinal, one card. Well, you see it on the screen. One card, one Cub, one beer at gmail.com. And I'll have the rules in the social media and in the comments for the YouTube. JJ, it's been great.
Loved it.
And we will see you next week. And let's try to keep ourselves pumped up, even this during this depressing time where there's no baseball. So all right, well, you have a good one.